Get him up here. Get up here, Mike. And Mike, I looked for the yellow ribbon, and I couldn't find it in my garage. And there's a reason I can't find stuff in my garage, and Judy will explain that to you. But didn't wear. I had this stick-on yellow ribbon that had First Lieutenant Purdy on it, and I can't remember the unit. But I had that on 2 or 3 different vehicles over the years. And I traded in my Sequoia, which was the last vehicle to wear the yellow ribbon. And I did mean to bring that over here today, and Mike can give it to you, and I couldn't find it. So there you go. But when Mike came back from the war and got back into the swing of things, that's when I first realized that I had missed him and didn't know it, because I didn't know him well enough. But what I found out about Mike Purdy was, number one, he's a really smart guy. And I take a lot of credit for that. And Cecil will be up here in a minute, but he takes most of the credit for it, Mike. But over the years, Mike worked in a number of different parts of our organization, and everywhere he was, he made it better. And he always left an organization better, or part of the organization better, than it was when he moved there, Mike, and I really do mean that. And then a few years ago, I get this call from Mr. Mayor, and we had a conversation about Mr. Purdy. And he asked me some pretty pointed questions, and then he went ahead and hired you anyway, Mike, so I can say about that. What are you laughing about? You know the truth, don't you? No, but I do really want to say in all seriousness about Mike Purdy is he's number one, he's one of the smartest people I've ever met, and number two, he's one of the most devoted people that I've ever met, both to his family and to the organization he works for. And Mr. Mayor, he's really been devoted to our county here, and we're blessed that you saw fit to hire Mike. And he's, where you are right now in this facility has a lot to do with Mike Purdy. And Mike, all the citizens in Williamson County, and for that matter, the state of Tennessee, need to be thankful to you for the part that you played in this facility right here, because as you come in and, oh my God, Lewis Friedman's here. Lewis, is the traffic okay running down 65? Okay. Lewis has known Mike longer than I have, and he may want to, Hannah, where are you? He can't talk, right, okay. We won't even go there, Lewis. Lewis Friedman now runs TDOT for the state of Tennessee. And he was a former compatriot of Mr. Purdy and myself at TEMA, and before he took over the Department of Transportation. And but Mike, back on our serious note, I certainly wish you the very best in what your next endeavor is. And I don't know how deep you're going to get in that today. Probably not very, because I don't think you understand it very well anyway yet. So I guess that wasn't very serious, was it?
Yeah,
okay.
it's true.
It is true. Well, but Mike, I want to wish you the very best in whatever you do next. And I want to thank you so much on behalf of our family, in our county family, and particularly for this facility and your wisdom and your guidance for the county of Williamson County. Mac, my friend.
You can't get me this close to the microphone, Clay, without, So when I started at TEMA, I was in the watch point. It was then called operations. And the reason the general said 2002 is because that's what he remembers. What he doesn't remember is that when we were in operations in that era, there was only one person on the night shift. And there were these wildfires burning in Florida. Now, when you're on the night shift at TEMA, there was a phone call at about 2 a.m., which tested kind of a roll call of all the states across the eastern United States. Memphis called you about 4:45 for a radio check. And unless somebody spilled something on the interstate, that was all that happened from about 11 o'clock at night till you got relieved at 6 in the morning. So it was 2 in the morning. There was a VCR. Hannah, I'll tell you what that is later. And so I had a couple of movies, and I had my feet propped up in a chair, sitting over in a corner away where you could hear the radio and phones. But when they opened the door, which was about down the hall and 20 steps up to the parking lot, the door beeped. There was an alarm that you could tell if the door opened or not. And then you could see the cameras and who was coming in. And it's about 2 in the morning, and I'm kicked back with my shoes off, watching a movie. And we were sending, Tennessee was sending firefighters, and the Air National Guard was flying those firefighters to Florida. Well, General Bassham was coming down the stairs when I was in ops that night, and scared me to death that there was a 2-star general coming down the stairs while I was watching a movie. And I very quickly made myself look like I knew what I was doing, and I was ready to answer the phone, the radio, and paused my movie. And so I remember that story, and thankfully he doesn't. And so...
Mr. Whaley, would you like to come up? I appreciate it.
Well, I was going to remind you that that's a lot of the people in this room will remember the fires, and that was the July 4th firecracker 400, I guess they called it, down in Daytona. And it's the first time it had ever been canceled in history and never been canceled since. And it was because of those fires. And I believe that incident is what really gave Jim Bassham the opportunity to see what a great thing he could do by engaging in emergency management in Tennessee. Because when he left being the adjutant general for the Air Guard in Tennessee, fortunately, he took the opportunity to come and work with TEMA. And that was the largest, at that time, that deployment for EMAC was the largest one that had ever occurred in history of the United States. And, up till that time, logistics pretty much halted a lot of the possibilities of what you could do in mutual aid from one state to another. We were just fortunate enough to have General Bassham as the adjutant assistant general, because the only way we could get the equipment, and we had about, if I remember right, 16 pieces of equipment, fire equipment, to go with our 120 or so responders that went. The only way we could get that equipment down there fast enough was air transport. And I have worked around a lot of generals in my lifetime. And from the time I was 20 years old up until today, but I've never seen anybody the way General Bassham took control of laying out the times of the flights and the intricacies that had to go into place to be able to move those huge pieces of equipment. It'd be like taking most of the huge fire equipment in Williamson County and moving it in 12 hours down to Daytona Beach on a deployment. The intricacies of doing that is unbelievable. But yeah, that's how I think we got Jim Bassham, which is now the State Emergency Operations Center in Nashville, is called the James Bassham Operations Center for the state of Tennessee. And I think in recognition of MAC, I think you ought to pick out one of the restrooms here in the building and put that up there as now the MAC Purdy source of, pleasure for all the people that are coming here for all the great meetings that we've had and everything. The day that Mac Purdy walked into my office at TEMA, I believe you were a junior at Vanderbilt. He was working his way through Vanderbilt with serving as with the athletic department. And I just heard a few minutes ago that David Williams has passed away today, a few minutes ago, which is extremely sad for everybody, not just the Vanderbilt alumni. But he walked into my office, and he was the first intern that we'd ever had in our intern program. And I was a one-man planning shop at that time. Now we have about, gosh, I've got 16 or 18 people in my group now. We had just my office back then. And I had the office where General Shoulders used to be in the back row there. And I had one desk, and I said, well, we're going to have an intern. Get me another desk. And so I got a desk about this size right here and put it in the corner of my office. And Mac came in, and he said, you know, let's talk about what my projects are going to be and what I'm going to present to my counselor at the university about how we're going to progress here for the next period of time. So we talked about that, and then I got a call from ops, and we had a mission going on, and I had to go down there and work on. It probably came from David Wolf, asking me to come to operations and say we need some kind of help or something. So I rushed down there, and Mac said, well, wait a minute, what am I going to do for the rest of the day? And what did I say, man? That's right. The Tennessee Emergency Management Plan, which is about a document about this thick on both sides of the sheet. If you took the time to really comprehend it, I'd say it might take a month. But I knew that would keep him busy for a while. And it did, didn't it, Mac? Kept you busy for a while. It didn't take me but a few days to figure out that Mac Purdy was going to be a star, not only for TEMA, but for everything he was going to do for the rest of his life. And I expected that because I knew the background that he came from. I knew his grandfather, I knew his father, I knew the family that he came from, I knew their history, I knew the history of their history in Williamson County, and I knew how he was raised. I knew how he went to school, and he proved all of that to me by every assignment I ever worked with him on. And I think General Bassam learned that too, that he could trust Mac with our lives, basically. And he's never failed us. And I have never questioned anything that I've ever given or worked with Mac on. And I've always trusted that it would be done correctly, it would be done with integrity, and it would always be done with the most important thing in mind is that the safety of the people in this community were the number one thing that was in his mind. A lot of people work and they do their daily work, and what they work for is a salary, and they dread coming to work, and it's just something to do. With Mac, it's a life. And it's your life, because that's what he's promised to protect. And every day when he gets up in the morning, that's exactly how it starts. So it's never failed. From the day he walked into my office, and that was back in the 90s, till today. And Mac, I know going forward, you'll continue to do that. I know you will. I'm not going to tell a lot of other stories that I could tell on you today because I don't know who might continue those stories on, and I can save them for later on. And as the general says, I can always embellish them later on so that they're either more humorous or more lifelike. I can tell you this, and I'll bring it to a quick conclusion. Williamson County has really enjoyed a wonderful thing for the last few years, and that's having Mac Purdy as the emergency management director. And it's hard for you to realize how important and how dedicated a job he's done for the citizens of this county. You'll realize it years from now, because his legacy is always going to be written from now on about what's going on in Williamson County. You're not going to lose him. He'll be here, and he'll continue to be a big part of this community. But always keep in your mind that when the mayor decided that he was going to move forward in this community with emergency management as a base for building a safe community, that he chose Mac Purdy, and you did well, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Anderson?
Thank you, Hannah. So when you follow two good speakers and two great men like that, there's not a lot to be said, Mac, but I was reflecting on that period of time that I first met you and got some okay recommendations to put you on from the general and others. I kind of know how they feel now, because I think most people thought that the emergency management director in any given county wasn't as aspiring of a job that you needed to be. And until I could convince you of the vision and the mission that we were going to have here, and you bought into that, and I'm very thankful for that. Between him and Bill Jorgensen, which, by the way, Bill is not able to be here. He has a sick child, and they have to go back to the hospital and have some more tests done. I think back on that period of time in 09, 08, when we were trying to develop the programs we needed for Williamson County, and that was going to have to start with an individual. As many of you know, this is a building. It is bricks and mortar, it's thick glass, all of the things that go into it. But it's the people that run your organization. As I look around this room, there's a lot of significant people that have very, very important jobs that we just couldn't do, and this was one of them. And we started that journey with some 50 people in a room. State folks, fed folks, local cities, all the different disciplines that we had. And out of that, I made the most critical mistake I've ever made in my life. I told Mac not to think about dollars and cents, and boy, he didn't. And I've never made that mistake again in front of him. But oftentimes when you're trying to develop vision and a mission, you've got to lay the dollars aside and come at that in a different way. And out of that, as traumatic as it was in 2010 for Nashville and our state about the flood, that created a sense of urgency in our community, a sense of pride that said, we got to do better than what we had here. And Sheriff Long, who's now the Commissioner of Homeland, and I were stuck out in a vehicle in the middle of nowhere and making phone calls to a general in Nashville saying, can you get us a 2-ton truck so we can go out here and get people? And we both concluded that we can do better than this. And so we did. And I give a lot of credit to the sheriff for help selling that program to some people. Mac, you were certainly one of those that helped develop those plans, you and Bill. And we came up with a different idea for a county. Let's call it a public safety entity. Let's combine emergency. Let's combine sheriff. Let's combine these things. And let's don't worry about turf and who's in charge. Let's worry about getting the job done for our citizens, and how of that is worked. Again, that's leadership. You will be missed. I have personally enjoyed you. You're actually a couple of years older than my oldest child, so I can say you're a fine young man. I remember when my children left home. In some ways, I was glad they were leaving. Some ways, it was just the next season in life that they had to go through and that I had to go through. I wish you the best of luck. You'll always have a special place in this county. You'll have a special place in many people's heart. I conclude with Cecil's remarks and to the General's remarks. We have enjoyed using your talents and skills, even though you are Vanderbilt. I do regret that David, but Mac and I would enjoy those arguments. At least he was smart enough to marry a Tennessee girl. Your life will always be surrounded here in Williamson County. I know you're not moving. You live out in the unincorporated area. The sheriff can slow you down at any time he so desires. You won't have the marked car, and you won't have all the bells and horns and whistle. Be sure, Diane, we get all that back. And I wish you the best of luck. So I want to say this. Good luck to you. You go with a blessing, as Mac told me back last summer what he was planning on doing. And so we've gone ups and downs, and so it's there now. You will do an outstanding job. You really will. And someday, if I live long enough to see it, I think you'll even do a great job in another role somewhere in the state of Tennessee. You're that kind of quality, and you're that kind of a man. And I know you're raising your children in the right way. And we're very blessed to have had you for these many years that we've had. So let me say this. We have a couple of parting gifts. The first one, so wherever you go, we wanted to give you, come on up, Mac. We want to give you this because if I don't give it to you, you're going to take the one out of your office, and that's called stealing. In case you didn't know that. I know you're in a world that you're used to just doing everything. And then your staff has prepared something here very, very special for you. Go ahead, Hannah. You want to tell them what it is, man? You're not getting the mic.
It's the challenge coin and pictures of the EOC and a patch and a badge. And my whole name, which is a thing in and of itself.
So, Mike, again, thank you. I will allow you one last time with the microphone. As he comes into my office to present a 30-minute budget, it takes an hour and a half for him to get through. But you've got 3 minutes to wrap up what you want to say to these. Not 5, 3. And I'm going to ask Diane to put the clock on you.
Yes. So 8 years ago, we talked about what our strategy was, and sitting in an interview panel, there were 4 bullet points that I kind of had quickly thrown on a one-pager. One-pagers are front and back, just, we wouldn't make them short. But it was make sure that we built a local emergency planning committee, ensure that the emergency operations center in the county was ready for a disaster, build the team, and assess the program against the Emergency Management Accreditation national standard. 3 of those are really all the same thing. Building the team, the local emergency planning committee, and EOC readiness is not about the building or the room we're in, it's about the people. And then holding that against a standard that is outside of ourselves. And I thought at that time that in about 6 to 12 months, we'd have those things checked off the list and we'd move on to something else. But that strategy is the same today. Build the team and make sure the EOC is ready and continue to assess and build that against the standard. Your emergency management program, the county mayor, the community's emergency management program was the first local program in the state of Tennessee to be accredited against the national standard. And that is because of y'all's work. A little bit later, the mayor looked at me in the last 2 years and said, talking about a disaster that happened somewhere else in the world, and he looked at me and said, speaking of that disaster, can a disaster like that happen here? Now, we were asking for budget stuff at that point, and you always kind of hate to say, no, sir, we've got it all under control, because either that disaster is going to happen to you the next day, or they're going to tell you no to your budget, because if you're ready, you don't need anything else in your budget. But I paused for a second because you don't want to tell your boss that you're not ready. And so that's a hard question to answer. Can a disaster impact us here? And the reason we're here and the reason we do this work is because absolutely. There is always a disaster that can overwhelm our capability to respond. And it's why we work together to do this. It's why I've told my team I'm staying in the emergency management profession. I'm just going to go learn how to do it in the private sector. I'm not leaving Williamson County. If my time allows, I'll stay as a volunteer as long as they'll have me. And thank you for what you've allowed me to do here and for my time, and for all of you all too. Thank you.